So UL is doing what?
Safety standards for VR and AR. So they're doing. Safety standards for VR and AR.
Okay, cool.
Alright.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, welcome. Real quick show of hands. How many of you have never been here before? Number? Okay, so my name is Matt Ryan. I'm the founder of VR Chicago Meetup. Hopefully you're all in the right spot. Tonight we're going to be talking about education. I am the co-founder and chief technology officer of that company back there called Untitled Chapter. I'm also the Chicago chapter president of the VR Association. We're going to let our sponsors, who actually helped us throw this event, come up and just say a quick hello message, and then we'll get into the content pretty quickly. So let's start with 1871, and avoid the cable however you can.
Hey guys, how you doing today? We want to thank you again for coming. We appreciate you for visiting us. For those who it's their first time, this is 1871. You can consider us a tech hub here in Chicago for technology and entrepreneurship. We are not just a co-working space, but we're also an incubator and accelerator. We appreciate you for supporting another VR AR meetup. And you will find my business cards off to the right-hand side of the room where you can ask me more questions about what we do. I just wanted to take a few minutes to announce something that we're planning for January 2020. So here recently, we took an opportunity to build out what is essentially a school for entrepreneurs here at 1871. So we've started 4 new accelerator programs. And the purpose of those accelerator programs are to be able to help any entrepreneur or startup move the needle, regardless of stage of development. So the 4 programs are called Explore, Build, Launch, Grow. You can see how that kind of trails up, and it's a natural inclination to growth, right? So we can help you at any stage, whether you're early or later stage. And we have many ways that we can help you build out your product, give you the best fundamentals for your business, as well as give you great leadership skills. So we do that in 4 different ways. We have master classes that are taught by industry gurus from the Chicago tech community, as well as all of the startups across the nation. So we were able to get the SVP of growth of Grubhub and the VP of product of Jellyvision to come and teach 90-minute workshops to our cohorts. We also do experiential events, so we'll take a cohort to another startup here in the community, allow them to see what it's like to have a budding startup that's growing, that's thriving, give you the opportunity to speak with some of their C-level execs and learn from the best who are in your area to build out your community. We also have curated mentorship, so we have the opportunity to help you regardless of your stage. We will look at your company, what are your needs, what are your milestones coming up, what are your goals, and we'll find a mentor to help you meet those. And we also do study groups, key activities, and things of that nature. So if you'd like more information, we'll have an info session that we'll be hosting here around mid-November, and then we'll do another in probably first or second week of December. And I'm always here at 1871, 5 days out of the week, sometimes 6, depending on what's going on. You can always stop me for questions, or you can grab my card and shoot me an email afterwards. I'll be happy to give you more info. Thank you for joining us.
So I'll go in the order of the actual sponsors on the PowerPoint. Bundle is next with Zach.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Zach Martin. I'm one of the founders of Bundle AR. We're an augmented reality company. It's kind of a weird name for things when really you want to show it's just on-demand information. So for education, we're doing on-demand information for in your packets or your books, whatever it would be, or campus tours like we just launched for Arizona State. So we're trying to show that augmented reality is more than just a game. It is actually something that you can use in education, and you can track every interaction so you can watch what your students are learning, how they're learning, what they need to improve on. So we really think for on-demand training, learning development is all perfect for AR. We hope you stop by, and want to thank 1871 for hosting as well. And thank you.
And Charlie.
Uh-oh.
Charlie's talking for the VR Association, and he is our marketing director.
And this is the first time I've ever done this, so welcome everybody. Let me tell you a little bit about the VR AR Association and They're the group that helps us put this all on here. We're the Chicago chapter. There are over 50 chapters of this association, about 4,200 companies and members worldwide. Recently had a global summit in Vancouver. Attendance was up, I believe, 35%. A lot of interest, lots going on. There used to be several organizations in Chicago related to VR, AR, but they're all sort of centering around this group, which is nice. So be good to become a member. You can talk to us. You can find me, anybody with a badge, and talk about becoming a member. Why would you become a member? There's special events besides this. There's access to equipment. We actually had free Magic League training for people this year, more than once. So a lot going on. You can come talk to us about that. We have a Chicago chapter company, Underwriters Laboratory, is currently writing the safety standards for VR, AR safety. So you can get involved in a big way with what's happening in this industry. I'd like to introduce our board members. Not everybody's here, but you have Matt, our chapter president, Matt Wren. Ramita Chawla is all the way in the back. She's our VP of Strategy. Paula Weigel is VP of Events. I'm sure almost all of you met her when you came in. Mark Prasad is Sponsorships. John Adler, and I'm VP of Marketing. So next month is Esports and Gaming. It's going to be another great panel. And you should pay attention to next year. We've got a lot planned, a lot scheduled. Check us out on Facebook. And I believe that's it. Thank you for coming.
And the one thing I get to say about it, if you want to talk to that guy after we're done with this, anybody who joins tonight, you will get a 20% discount on your membership. So we'll just set that one for. Okay. So really quickly, let me actually see if our other person is online yet. And she is. Hi, Julie. Wait. Hi, Julie. Okay, so we need to figure out why your sound is not coming through here. Give me a second. Julie, can you try and say something to us?
Yep, I'm talking right now and I can hear you.
Okay, cool. You know what? Are you okay with me just letting her go first? She was gonna go a little bit later, but I'm no action, honestly. So I want to let Julie go. So this is Julie Smithson, all the way from Toronto, and I'll let her introduce herself from this point. Take it away.
Can I maybe see who's in the room? Because right now I'm staring at your
Staring at
screen.
me.
And you.
This will be a little bit tricky with cable, so hang on a second.
Okay. That's all right. Am I on a screen? Or
Yes,
anything?
you are.
Or... Oh, okay. Let's see who's there. Ah, hello everybody. Hello Chicago.
Sit down, hold it, forget it. Good.
All right, I'm good.
And then everyone else lost you because of the cable. Hang on a second. There we go. You back? And I lost sound. Give me a couple seconds, Joel. I know she can hear me, I just can't hear her now. This is the fun of doing this way. Try saying something again, let's see if we can hear you. No? Give me a second. Let's try again one more time. Where's my 71 people? Let's try that. So I'm guessing you can hear me, but we cannot hear you right now. Give me a moment. Actually, what I might do is I might just mute you, honestly. Let's try that. Working for a second. Actually, here, hang on. Let it completely reset.
nothing on your side, it's completely on ours, I know that much, so give me a few more seconds.
Again, can you hear me now?
There we go, we got you.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm not touching anything again, go.
Okay, so I hear a little bit of echo, but I'll just assume that everybody can hear me clearly. Thanks very much, everybody, for having me today. It was actually a relief that I am here. I went to back-to-back conferences, the first one with Matt in Vancouver and flew to Vancouver and had a great couple of days there. And then yesterday I was at an IBM conference and my brain has just been going. For today's conference, it's been really sweet because I've been in my pajamas all day thinking, this is awesome, I'm going to a panel tonight and I don't have to get changed to leave my house. So obviously the benefits to doing these virtual conferences. So thanks everybody for joining the panelists, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I'll get my piece over with and then you can listen to all the live bodies in the room. My name is Julie Smithson, and I'm from a company called Metaverse and XR Ignite. Metaverse started about 3.5 years ago. Really, we've been in this business for about 5 now, and working on a bunch of developments over the past couple of years. We had a broad approach in understanding, like many of you, and doing everything, pivoting around, trying to get our feet wet and understanding the technology. And through our networks and connections and involvement in the industry, especially with the BRARA, I hold a couple of positions and I'm co-president of the Toronto chapter, so a similar position as Matt Wren. Here in Canada and Toronto, I'm trying to pull my ecosystem together. And I also hold the co-chair positions of the Education Committee, the Student Committee, Training Committee, and I'm also on the 5G Committee, and all of it to make sure that I remain connected and learning about everything that's being done in the ecosystem. So I guess going into the education piece a little bit more, it was about almost 6 months ago now that we started our XR Ignite program, when we saw a desperate need within the ecosystem of supporting the XR startups that were out there and having them be ready to do business with enterprise. And through our XR Ignite company, I managed to connect with over 160 startups around the world, all with different backgrounds and technologies and products and services that people were selling. And it was, with that, it was a bit of an eye-opener on how much everybody kind of needs everybody right now to support each other in this ecosystem of innovative technologies, emerging technologies, new processes, new learning, especially. And you know, I have a 15 and an 11-year-old. Every day I wake up and I do everything for them. I know for a fact that they're going to school for a future of work that isn't training them or educating them to support them in their future of work. So I've made it a mission to inspire and educate the next generation of future leaders, and using this XR technology to help that help everybody become more immersive in their learning and using these technologies. So that's kind of my why. I try to be involved in every single aspect of learning bits and pieces about new technologies and how to engage them in the classrooms. Only until recently, actually, did I start focusing on K-12. Before it was always about enterprise training, which I do a little bit of work in that space too. And in building that, it became very apparent, like it should have always been, that enterprise becomes the standard for education. Why are we teaching our kids anything different? One of the things that kind of pivoted in my brain in the last couple of weeks is I was asked to prepare a presentation for augmented reality and virtual reality use cases for K-12. And in some of my research that I was doing, I came across a gentleman by the name of Warren Fern, who wrote a paper on the education system and the lack of sciences. in the education system especially, and this was written for Europe, in London, England, and when I started to dig in a little bit deeper about this, I realized that over time, sciences have been taken out of the curriculums in K-12 more and more, and the crazy thing is sciences actually teaches us soft skills, teaches us critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, collaboration, and all of the things that our talent coming out of schools today is lacking. So if you go back to sciences and exploration and curiosity and all of those things that come into play when studying sciences is where we actually need more strength in our K-12 system. And so I'm actually going to be presenting this weekend in Europe on how augmented reality will play a big part in the K-12 education system, especially using scientific applications that encourage those soft skills training. And you know, when you think about where math is today and how many schools have problems with scores in math, and it's because we took sciences away in those classrooms, which led to problem solving. So no wonder the kids are unable to solve those math problems. So anyway, so that's a little bit about my thesis and some of the things I'm doing. I don't want to take up too much time, but if anybody has any questions for me, maybe Matt can screen the questions or just go about the questions.
Actually, I got a question. Do you know when Global Summit in Europe is taking place? Because I was looking for it, I couldn't find it.
I don't think they have a scheduled date yet.
It's not scheduled yet? Okay. We just got back. So VRARA, for the audience, VRARA Global Summit just took place last week in Vancouver. And it was kind of amazing. It saw 35% growth year over year. And pretty much everybody was there. Like
Except for Oculus.
Oculus?
Yeah, they were the only ones that really
they weren't there.
represented.
No, somebody from Facebook was there though. They weren't speaking, but someone was there.
Yeah, they were floating around.
Anyway, if you don't mind hanging on, I'll put you on mute, and I'm actually going to go over to the slides and let the other presenters talk. And you know, they've probably got about an hour if you want to just step away, but we'll be back. And you know, we can see if we can jump in on the Q&A. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. So let's go. I'm actually going to turn the audio off of this one. Next up is Kelly Page. So, it's on. There we go. I'll just hand it off to you. You can introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Are we having a good night so far? My name is Dr. Kelly Page. I am currently the director of Bennett Labs. And just to give you a little bit of a short background, as you can tell, I'm not from here. And I'm formerly from Australia, and I did my PhD back in the early days of web and internet design, looking at how coders and developers design and come up with new languages and expand on the languages they're working with, and how we're socialized around technology, different ways to design and develop. But that led me on a path of really understanding not just what's happening with and through technologies, through learning. So digital learning is very much my area of expertise, but what's also happening around technologies and how we're socialized in our everyday, and how that differs depending on gender, ethnicity, if I am a kindergarten child, if I am in my 60s, what does it look like to really experience technologies differently, and how are we learning about technology? So I immigrated to the UK, and then I came here to wonderful Chicago. Thank you very much for the weather. I'm loving it. But just to give you a little bit of background, so here in Chicago, who's familiar with the Illinois Math and Science Academy? Yes, beautiful. So I was at the IMSA for about 3 years. Firstly as their research fellow, and secondly as their chief innovation officer. Really looking at how do we do intergenerational co-design and co-development, because there are youth today that are getting younger and younger and are playing with artificial environments, they're playing with virtual reality, they're doing, I had 2 elementary children come to IMSA with their mum because they'd come up with an idea for an AI-informed trash can. And so young people are getting into the design and development world a lot earlier. We also have what I call a Minecraft generation that are builders and creators, and they're asking some phenomenal questions. So I very much look for learning environments that are entrepreneurial, that are progressive. They can exist within our public school system, our charter schools, as well as our private schools. And really starting to identify educators who I would say have an entrepreneurial mindset with how they're either working within curriculum to bring project-based learning into classroom and educational environments. So I joined Bennett Day. So Bennett Day School is a progressive independent school at the corner of Morgan and Grant. I don't know if anyone's familiar or seen it. So what's really unique about Bennett Day School is we approach our faculty and our students all as learners. It's not just student and teacher as expert, and we approach our youth and our adults as co-designers and co-developers in the learning experience, and that can be from face-to-face to hybrid, and so we're exploring different ways that learning takes place, including having kindergarten students and grade ones do app development and work with Unity. Right, pretty cool. As well as looking at what does professional development look like for educators to really step into this space. So project-based learning, I'm sure project management is something we're all familiar with, especially in industry. Project-based learning is quite interesting. There's a series of schools in Italy called Reggio Emilia. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Reggio schools. That are very much focused on relationship development, creativity, innovation. They're early childhood schools, as well as project-based learning, from pre-K right through. So our school does project-based learning from very, very early, right through to grade 12. We have our upper school, for example, who is currently developing projects based on being inspired by the city landscape here in Chicago, and doing projects around architecture, migration and gentrification, as well as looking at Chicago waterways. So our curriculum is very, very different, which gives us freedom to bring technologies into projects, into classroom environments or project-based environments that, it's not that you're in a separate classroom learning coding. If the project calls for a digital immersive environment, then we will seek out a partner to come and work with us to immerse our students into that development, as well as educate our teachers. So it's really, really interesting to start to look at education and learning environments as entrepreneurial, as innovative and creative, and I don't think we often do. So I kind of come from the school of thought that educators and our school districts have been done a disservice in that we don't see them as entrepreneurial. If you're in a classroom with 35 to 40 children, you have to pivot a lot, right? And you're taking a big risk on other students or other people's learning. So Bennett Labs is a learning innovation lab where we partner with industry. We also partner with other school districts and innovators who are looking at learning differently. And how can we mirror certain skills and competencies that we don't know what the future is going to be for our children in terms of workplace, in terms of opportunities. So we're trying to build competencies that no matter what the future looks like, they're going to be able to not just survive, but thrive. And virtual reality and augmented reality is something we've identified that's really important. And the reason is because there is often in education and learning that there might be learning experiences we want our young people to experience, but because of resources, they can't. And so virtual reality can provide us with opportunities for our students and our teachers to experience worlds. Go to Italy, go to Spain, really be able to experience different things that for resource reasons, they might not have. With augmented reality, so it's really important in terms of how they explore their current environment, and it might be certain things that are going on or objects in their current environment that they can explore differently. This is also a generation of network narratives, where their narrative, children's narrative, is being developed and written by parents before their children are even born through social and digital media. So in addition to looking for opportunities to have these learning experiences within our schools, we're also looking at how do we treat children as co-designers and co-developers. Has anyone here ever worked with children when designing technologies? What was that experience like? Any thoughts? It was tough. Any reason why? Any thoughts on that? Yeah. Yeah. What other experiences?
This is more anecdotal, but when
Yeah.
I created apps and let my 3 and 5-year-old try to test them, they
Yeah.
can always break it in ways that nobody else can.
Absolutely.
So it's this free
Oh
form.
my gosh,
They
yeah.
don't have this preset notion of what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
They'll do everything.
Yeah.
And they'll try things, but they'll experiment in ways that themselves are like, well, I can't do that. That would be dumb to do that.
Yeah.
They'll just do
The kids will do it, right? They explore, and they are constantly exploring, constantly discovering. The younger they are, and I fundamentally believe that children in pre-K, kindergarten, grades 1 and 2, they can bring that humanity to artificial intelligence, if I'm honest with you. But it's really interesting. They're also exploring with their bodies. They're exploring the environment around themselves, so it's really interesting to start to see, and not just see children as testers of technology, or someone to talk to about it, but actually have them working with you on design and developing those worlds. So we have a number of members of our team who are game designers and game developers who are on faculty, and so working with us, and when these opportunities arise. So that's Bennett Labs, and prior to that, and I know I'm going to hand over because I know this is just the introduction, Illinois Math and Science Academy. One thing that we did as well is we started to work with different organizations where our high schoolers were immersed in designing and developing learning experiences through AR and VR. And it was really interesting to have them working side by side with coders and developers at 15 and 16, and as internships, or whatever that was. So it really exposed them to a different world and the creation of worlds, not just consumers of worlds. So that gives you a little bit of a background. I'm happy to talk to you more, but I believe we've got more people introduced. So, thank you.
So yeah, sorry, actually, we had a lot of people that are first time here, so I didn't go over the format. I just realized that I haven't done it. So basically, we're going to do a couple of presentations really quickly. These are just primarily for you to get to know who these people are, get to know what their backgrounds are so that they can answer your questions. We do have people who have obviously educational backgrounds, we have people who have technology backgrounds, and we have people who are kind of across that. Up next is Bree from DePaul. So here we go.
I have slides and a cold. What have you done now? But can you start? You know what, that's good. Okay. Hi, that's me. All right. Hi, I am Bree McEwan, and I, as Matt was saying, I'm from this way, DePaul University. I think I bring a little bit of a different background to the stage tonight. I do not have a PhD in digital learning. My PhD is actually in interpersonal communication. And so I came to thinking about AR from someone who was studying social interaction, which then turned into studying how people interact on social technologies, and then sort of led into how can we use AR in an educational way. And I teach at DePaul, so I wear a lot of hats, but these are some of them. I'm an associate professor in the College of Communication. I sometimes call myself a communicologist, but no one else does, so that's okay. I'm the program coordinator for our Common Tech BA, and I'm the co-director of our virtual and augmented reality communication lab, which right now exists in that it has a logo that I made yesterday. But it also has funding, so we're excited about that. But the reason that Matt invited me is that I teach a class called Discover Chicago, Augmented Chicago. And this is a freshman year experience class, and our students come in and we do an immersion week. So I spend my first week of September about 8 to 9 hours a day with 20 18-year-olds. And and we survived. And I try not to lose them in the city of Chicago. But the idea is, for these classes, this is something that DePaul offers on a variety of different topics. Mine is one of many different topics. You can take Chicago theater, or you can take Chicago and Pilsen and different things. And so we have this idea in our first year experience classes that we're going to teach students kind of three things. One is our DePaul mission, which is human dignity, social responsibility, diversity, and urban sustainability. And so those tenets of the DePaul mission, we try to blend through everything that we're doing. Sometimes it works better than others, but within the Discover Chicago class, it's important to us that students finish that class understanding what the mission is and how they can potentially contribute to it. The second part, the second bubble over there, is that we want them to discover Chicago. So we want them to get out into the city, and we want them, by the end of the week, the first week, to really understand how to use the CTA. That's a big thing for us. We have 2 campuses. We're the campus on the red line, right? And so we want them to get comfortable in the city, and this happens in different ways. We have students who are from Chicago proper, who are like, yes, of course, this is what we do. We have students who are from all over the place, all over the country, or international students, and they come and they believe me when I tell them, like, this is what we do. We're going to the South Side day one. We're going to McKinley Park. Let's go. And then we have students from the suburbs who are like, my mom told me never to get on the red line. So we have this aspect of being out in the physical world. And this is important in what I'm going to talk about in the class, because being out in the physical world means that this is an augmented reality class, not a virtual reality class. And so what I'm looking for in tying together this piece, because the third piece of the class is offering professors, we have to propose a class, we have to be accepted to teach it, but it's offering us a chance to teach something like new and fun and cool that we're excited about. Then students get this experience of learning about DePaul, learning about Chicago, from a professor who's like really geeked to teach about this particular topic. And I'm like really geeked to teach about augmented reality. But a lot of what I do then is looking for apps that have and experiences that are physically located somewhere in the city, right? And I like to get out in different places in the city. So I brought a couple, thank you. You know, I have them in my purse too, but that doesn't help me up here. I brought some pictures, I think you can see them on the screens too, of some things that we've done. So there's the Bundle AR plug at the DuSable Museum that we did this year. We've got some VR experiences that we've done at the Museum of Contemporary Art, the Eastland Disaster, and then I've got some Pokemon pictures. I think we've got just a line going there. But we go out through the city. So the first day we do an art app. It's called Wallamy, some of you may know it. And we go to the south side, we do kind of, light south side. Chinatown, McKinley Park, ITT, and I have them follow each other around in groups and find each other's art. We do we play with a variety of the different transit apps, and I point out to them they're all pulling from the same data. We go to the DuSable Museum, we go to the Art Museum, we do statue stores. I am stretching the definition of augmented reality a little bit in what we're doing in order to have enough experiences. And that's something that I'm sort of interested in this group thinking about as well, is where are the experiences that we can engage students in? Because for my class, right, this is the first week of class, I have students who are just getting to DePaul. I have to have experiences that are accessible through both Android and iPhones. I have to have experiences that are close to free because we can't charge an extra fee for the class. And I have to have experiences that we can get to in physical locations, so that's mobile applications. And then we are doing this with the class, with the idea of AR. We are going out, we're experiencing AR, but we're trying to get to these concepts beyond just, we're going to go out and play with a bunch of apps. And in fact, when I first proposed the class, the initial feedback I got from the panel who decided, like, are you just going to go play Pokemon Go all week? I was like, no, only on Friday. So we talk about these different things. So we've got contested definitions up there, right? We talk about what does it mean for augmented reality? What does that term mean? When Matt came in to talk to our class, he asked my class, what does augmented reality mean? And they paused, right? And that's because they were like, it's a contested definition, we don't know what to tell him. So this is the first time, though, for a lot of them in their education, right? If they haven't had this kind of entrepreneurial spirit in their classrooms, that they're being told, like, hey, we don't actually know what the official definition is. I'm not just going to put on a slide, augmented reality, da-da-da-da-da. I'm telling you, different people are going to have different ideas about it. And here's where their ideas are coming from, and here's how this process is working. But even things like, you know, we drill down to about week 3, they're like, I don't know what reality is anymore. We're learning, we're growing, right? I don't know either. So we talk about social movements, right? We're tying this to social justice, we're tying this to sustainability. We talk about how AI can be used in social movements. We talk about sociality, right? So what does it mean if a bunch of people are out playing Pokemon Go? We always, the day that we do Pokemon Go, we always run into someone else who's playing, right? And they start to see like, oh, there's a bunch of people still engaged in the game. In fact, we switched, I did the games day, we did Harry Potter, and I thought, ooh, new and exciting and fun. And then we did Pokemon Go. I still like Pokemon Go better. Even the ones who were like, I haven't played that, that's for middle schoolers. I'm not, but okay, if you're forcing me to take pictures, fine. They still enjoy it better because there are things that are more social about that game, and then they engage in the world in a different way. We talk about place, right? What does it mean to be at the zoo and be looking at the animals, but also looking at an AR thing? What does it mean to be at statue stories? How many of you know what statue stories are when I say that? Oh, you should do this. So, and it's great for like, you know, people come visit you in Chicago and you're taking them around, you do this little self-guided tour. There's statues all over, they have QR codes, you put it up on your phone and it tells you a story. And there's like Ross Geller, not his name, David Schwimmer. There we go. David Schwimmer voices the Beam, Bob Newhart voices Bob Newhart at the end of Being Peter. They're fantastic. But we talk about what does it mean to be in a place where everyone's sort of like walking by the statue, but then you have this depth of what's happening. We talk a lot about layers. What does it mean that now we've got reality, and reality has layers, right? The city of Chicago has layers, but now we're adding this other layer that's augmented, that not everybody is seeing in the same way. And so that kind of leads us into discussions of capitalism, of digital divides, right? How are we using these pieces? So this class, I think, is an interesting kind of case study in the ways that we might use AR in classes. I have a benefit in the class that the goal of the class is to use AR. So it opens up, like I don't have to teach history through AR or biology through AR. It's what can we do with AR and focus on a lot of different applications. I'm super excited if anyone has ideas for future visits. Like one of the reasons we went to the DeSalvo Museum this year is because Matt's like, you know, we have a new thing coming out, right? Yes. We're gonna go. So I'm excited to hear what the other panelists have to say and to hear your questions.
I'm not even going to get up this time. So, George.
Hello.
Here we go. You made it.
I did.
Can I just say George had the best headshot?
Right?
I
You
know.
do have
I
the
like
best
school
headshot.
picture day.
I left the jacket in the car. It seemed like a weird lunch. Okay, that's not me on the screen right there. Yeah, I was in another reality trying to get here from the suburbs, so it's a long story. So, hi, Julie. So I am George Berlin. I'm the head of George Berlin Studios, which you guess where I got the name from. But so one of the things that we do is we augment reality in a lot of different ways. One big thing I do a lot of is something they call augmented spatial reality, also called projection mapping, sort of like what they do on the outside of this building, but I haven't done it here yet. We'll talk about that later. But so I just came off of a world tour of projection mapping, so I did 3 stories that were connected, all about the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, and they started on a 1,000-foot-long palace that we projected on Romania back in September, and then I had another section of the story that was told at a festival called Blink in Cincinnati. If you guys want to see what projection mapping and light festivals do, like from a social standpoint, like Bree was talking about, go to something like that. There's 1.5 million people over 4 days came to see that.
was sidewalk to sidewalk, just full of people for 6 or 8 blocks long. Just the whole town is packed with human beings out to experience new media art in the real world. So when people talk about how digital may not, digital like that may not be reaching people, they're wrong. So we went there, and then another part of it was showing actually the same day as Romania in Japan at the 1 Minute Projection Mapping Festival. So I come from the content creation side. Our job is sort of to imagine and create amazing stuff. Part of what I like about immersive media, like augmented reality, VR, etc., is just how much potential there is to do pretty much anything you can think of with the technology. Between creativity and the ability to connect things together digitally, you can do almost anything. If you look at our website, you'll see some of the things we've done. Right now, there is a 3 museum interactives. If you go to the Chicago History Museum, you'll see one in their modern design exhibit. It's projection mapping. It's a touch screen. You can design a mid-century modern living room, and it projects right onto a 3-dimensional model of a room. So we do things that people can actually go out and experience. We have 2 more at the DuPage Children's Museum. If you want to hear about how fun it is designing interactive interfaces, try designing things for people that can't read because they're too small. So that's always exciting. But that one deals with it's kinetic and gesture-based interfaces for kids. One of them, you can be a music conductor, and as you're playing the music, it also paints from your hand movements in the air. So we do things like that. One of the festivals we've done before had virtual reality 3D tracking paint rollers that would paint video on the wall as you would use them. So we were working with an art museum there. We said, give us your 3 weirdest, stuffiest paintings, and we're going to sort of light them up so when you roll over, there's like a crazy candy-colored psychedelic version underneath. So part of what I like about that is it's augmented in ways that take people sort of out of their experience. They don't think about the technology. It's probably the most exciting part for me. If you have to explain your interface, you're in a lot of trouble. We just did a Halloween party that had all these little buttons that could change this huge spaceship console, and if people have to ask you how it works, you're not doing it right, which we found out a little bit. But so we do a lot of things like that. My time to the education part of this is that I also have taught how to design for these technologies at the college level for content creation. So we're not really coming from the side of using VR to educate. We're actually teaching people how to use these tools. So it's really interesting what people are used to. You learn a lot about their perceptions of how to use technology. One thing I've also taught in Chicago public schools using animation, coding, things like that for kids. It's really interesting how some students only see computers as either a thing to turn your English paper on or a thing to play games on. For some students, it's really hard to imagine that you would make things with a computer, which for a lot of us here is like, that's what we do all day long. But it changes a lot of your perceptions about what people need to learn in terms of creativity to just do the things that we all do all the time. So I've done work with CPS, with the Chicago Children's Film Festival. We've taught animation and filmmaking to kids as small as 4 years old. We've done coding for kids a little bit older with like Scratch and so on. And a lot of those kids have played with this stuff before. I don't know about you guys, but I pretty much didn't know anything about coding when I was 5. So it's kind of interesting. It's an interesting spread of students to see. At the college level, we've talked more about how to take all these technologies, what to do with them, to actually create things. One interesting observation I have with that is that a lot of schools are really siloed in what they teach their students. Even, I don't usually teach people from a technology background. It's usually people from an art or animation background. And you'll find a lot of times that these students are really trained to animate things for a flat camera. We have to sort of spend a lot of time changing their minds about how to get off of the screens. that, like this one, that we're all so used to seeing everything just on a flat screen. And so design for things that are dimensional or can change is a kind of a new experience for a lot of people, so we have to sort of get into that. That they're not used to I guess you could say the conceptual part is hard for a lot of people about VR and AR. And there's something else I was going to tell you. I think that's about it, actually. Any questions?
We'll get to that.
Excellent, thank you.
Cathy, right. Oh, you're sitting right up front. So Cathy Grochowski is next. I'm going to talk about her background since she's walking around. She spent a lot of time, if anyone's been to a grade school greatly and you've seen those smart boards, she spent a ton of time teaching schools how to actually use those, which is really cool because my kid's school has one. We didn't know when I was a kid, but you're here, so here you go.
Okay, wow, what a group so far, the people who have spoken. Excellent, interesting, unique backgrounds. And I'll bring a different direction here. When deciding about what to talk about as it related to education, I was a teacher for over 15 years, taught middle school science, and also taught technology and history and a lot of other things through those years. What I do now is I consult for virtual reality AR companies. I do training, as Matt mentioned. I've been since 2011 training teachers to use smartboard technology in the classroom, and kind of morphed some things and did some training where I worked for a company called Embodied Labs Virtual Reality and helped them grow their training and what they provide for caregivers, utilizing virtual reality to generate greater compassion. So that was a unique gig that I did. In addition, I'm what's called a pedagogy geek. Pedagogy is a fancy word for strategy, using strategy in the classroom to most effectively reach your students' needs. And with that, let me move forward and tell you a little bit about what I had put together for us. So I was thinking directions in education. How many people here either have a product in classrooms or want to get their product in schools? Anybody interested in doing that? Okay, good. Lots of you actually. Awesome. So maybe I was on the right track. So there's so many directions I could have taken this. So what I did is I just put a down and dirty, bare start here and said, what's one goal that people might be interested in? And I'm glad that you raised your hand so that I wasn't off on that. But let's get your product in the classroom would be one of the first goals. So one of the things that you need is a champion in the school or the school district, whether that's going, and I'm going to give you a list of the champions, and there's plenty more that you could add, but you know, who are you going to call, so to speak, to get your product to be either piloted, perhaps, or if you've already had it piloted, you know, how are you going to grow your you know, network of schools that are using your product and things like that. You only get one shot. So let's say you identify some key players, and again, I'm going to share that list with you in a little bit, but you only get one shot to do a presentation and succeed at convincing the stakeholders, okay, meaning, you know, the powers that be in a school district or a school. You only get one shot to present in front of them. So what are you going to present to them, you know, that would be, make them enticed, we'll say, okay? So, what components was one of the things I thought about. What are you going to include in your presentation to convince the educators and the stakeholders about your product and that it's worthy to be there, okay? Because, as you know, there is so much technology in schools and budgets, it's costly and so on and so forth. How exactly will your product be best used in the classroom? You need to know that, okay? So that means you probably want to talk to teachers. That would be like a great idea. You know, hopefully you've got some teacher friends, some people you can talk to, so that you can find out how might they want to use your product, okay? And then what's your pricing plan? Again, that's like another thing. Like, how are you going to do it? You know, is it going to be software as a service? you know, with an annual fee to utilize your program. And again, I could go layers and layers deeper into these types of things, but anyway, let's talk though real quick about decision makers, superintendents, assistant superintendents in schools, directors of curriculum and development, content area divisional leaders, okay? So if yours is a product that's going to go in the sciences, you want to talk perhaps to somebody who's a divisional leader in a district for science, okay, or that type of thing, or math, or whatever it is. The principal of the school, in my years of selling my training, my smartboard training, to schools, I tried everything. I tried to call to the top. I tried to call, you know, the district, superintendent or assistant superintendent. I tried to call the curriculum instruction people. But when I would do trade shows to sell my training, what I found most commonly was it was the principal quite often who was the one who was going to make the decision whether or not to bring training and professional development to the teachers, okay? So, as much as it is important, you want to try to get people in all of these roles, like you want to start to know people in all of these roles. Again, classroom teachers being real important because you'll find out what it is that they need from you in order to make successful lessons, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, okay? Okay, making decisions, the how-tos are so important. What's the learning goal? With your product, what do you hope the outcome is going to be for the students? Okay, you need to be able to articulate that. Again, going back to that, you only have one shot kind of thing. Will this particular, thing that are you going to do it using your AR or your VR? Is it going to be a one-day lesson? Is it going to be a unit lesson? What's it going to be? Okay, so that's content areas. Like, if your product is geared towards reading, will there be anything related to science? Will there be anything related to math and that type of thing? How many stations will there be? Think about headsets and logistics and/or iPads or tablets. You need to know that. So again, walking in to present to the powers that be, the decision makers, whoever they're gonna be, okay, you need to have thought out a number of things. And I really only touched the tip of the iceberg on this, but I did this to kind of get your heads thinking in that direction, because I know there's quite a few people I've met over time who say, yeah, I really want to get my product in the classroom, okay? It's got a lot of dimensions to it. And then, what's an engaging lesson? If you've got a product that you want in education, okay, you need to have some lessons made that demonstrate your product and how it would be used in a lesson. Okay, so that's really, really key. So here's an example of, one potential lesson style. And for example, you need a strong introduction generally. This is what teachers do every day if they're good teachers, okay? You introduce your topic. It usually includes a review of content from yesterday or last week. You kind of want to engage the audience from the beginning. Then I put go over homework assignment in parentheses because normally in your type of lesson that you might be creating, you're not going to worry about the homework from yesterday. But normally a teacher will. Introducing the new material and the instructions, introducing how are we going to use this immersive learning in the environment. Okay, there's going to be instructions, there's going to be things that need to be discussed, including the logistics of how to handle those tablets safely, how to handle headsets safely, okay, and let's not fool around while we've got this expensive equipment, those types of things. So generally speaking, it's going to probably take a few days. What is the immersive learning activity? Okay, that's the actual meat and potatoes of your product, okay? And then you want to have some sort of review that's done with the students after that. And then perhaps something known as formative assessment, where you figure out what the students learned. And so that gives you some feedback on that. Okay, a little bit of education speak. I won't go through this right now, but there's something known as the 4 C's of learning, and that stands, and it was kind of referred to a little bit by others before me, That's communication, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. This phrase, known as the 4 C's, is something that's been kind of buzz terms a little bit in education now for the past several years, actually. But the idea is we want our children to exit school by the end of school, but much earlier, and very early, I should add. They need to know how to communicate, okay, authentically with different people and things like that and audiences. We always hear that kids don't do enough critical thinking today. So we want to make sure that they learn critical thinking skills. And these are things you can pitch to in your design of what your product is in terms of how it reaches these goals. Creativity and collaboration was also mentioned, both of those things, and we had highly creative people that have been up here so far. And I think 2 more things. One is when you get a chance, so I should back up on that other slide and say, look up the 4 C's and see what that means in education. And then also look up something called SAMR. SAMR is a model for tech integration in the classroom. And the keys to that is taking kids from substituting, and it's kind of a long story, I'm about to run out of time, so I'm going to cut it. But look up SAMR, I'll just tell you that. And then that's my contact info. Thanks.
Okay, so we've had an education innovator, we've had a professor, we've had a creative, I don't know, creative genius, technically was your title, and we've had somebody who is used to integrating technology in schools. Finally, we have our education expert and our educator, so Matt, that's you. And he has a video, which I'll try and find, since I'm not great at all the PowerPoint stuff. Here we go. And I'll just let you go.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Matt Houlihan. I'm an educator. I teach middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. The school I teach at is a place called Chicago Jesuit Academy. It's my 11th year there. I've been teaching 15 years. I went to Notre Dame, graduated from there, did a program called ACE, the Alliance for Catholic Education. They send new college grads off to go teach somewhere. I ended up in Mobile, Alabama, 1 week before Hurricane Katrina hit. So a very interesting first year of teaching. 50 students in my classroom sitting on radiators and windowsills, because that's all that we had left. And we were the school that was still open. So I'm at Chicago Jesuit Academy now. I've been teaching there in the middle school in social studies, in a class we call Formation, which is personal growth and development to lead the kind of life that you want to lead. I teach technology. I try to embed technology into my social studies class. So the rest of our guests here tonight are all folks who are kind of experts in the field of VR and AR and technology in general. I'm just an expert in teaching. So what I've been doing is trying to find ways to get that kind of collaborative, creative work into a classroom. For example, one of my classes is ancient history, and in our ancient Egypt unit, after learning about Egyptian religion and what the different beliefs were for what happened in the afterlife, and all the different tombs that they built, my students would design their own tombs. So they would have design of what they wanted to build, why they wanted to build it, they had to justify their decisions, and then build it in a 3D modeling program. We used Tinkercad, and then we printed that out, so the students were able to take home the monument that they built in the model of what the ancient Egyptians believed. So I try and do that kind of thing as often as possible. And in case there are questions later about what education might look like in different areas of the city, CJA is located on the west side of Austin. We're kind of in between Cicero and Laramie on Jackson Boulevard. I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but our guys are in many cases facing some challenges due to the institutions of our city that have not served them as well as they could. I don't know if we'll have time to hear the whole video, but this video has been created by our school in years past to help new folks to learn about us. So take a few minutes here to try and see some extra context. Thank you very much.
CJA is a relationship.
They love these young men and the family. They love us.
my son realizes that he's a part of a triangle with CJA being a part, my wife and I being a part, and my son being a part.
CJA is like an extra family. We care about you as a whole individual, and that means so much more than any test score that you'll ever get.
It's a wonderful feeling when you know that there are always people there that will love you and push you forward.
They've received love on a daily basis, and they know how to actually show that love to each other, and it's so beautiful to see that sometimes I can't help but get emotional about it.
That love piece is so important, right? Because we're called to love our neighbor. We're called to take care of each other. This is a daily opportunity to make sure that you can be who God wants you to be.
They care about you, they push you hard to be better.
Typically, students enter Chicago Jesuit Academy at the mid-third grade level in their reading and math scores. By the time they leave, they make as many as 7 years of progress in their standardized scores.
Students are in school from 7:30 until 5 every day. We go 11 months out of the year.
At the end of the day, you're going to be able to go to a good high school, a good college, and that's what I'm working towards.
97% of our alumni have graduated from high school. Over 70% of those alumni are in college, and 15% of them are working full-time or in the military.
I'm so incredibly proud that we have alumni at Northwestern, Williams, Denison, Knox, and Loyola Orobe College.
They're going to be successful because they're having all of their needs met, not just their academic needs.
That's what this place is about. It's not about you come here for your 4 years and then you're out the door and see you later.
If we say goodbye to a student in 8th grade, that's like growing a flower for 3 days and saying, yeah, I'm sure it's fine.
Once you're done with us here after 8th grade, you're not done with us.
CJ continues to work with students when they're 15, 16, 17, 18, through high school, through college.
We're an unusual school in that respect because we're not just a middle school. We also have the College Persistence Program, which is specifically designed to make sure there's a constant network of support and opportunities for our alums. Once they leave the middle school, they go on to high school, then college.
We used to think the goal was get to a great high school, and then you're good. And obviously that's not it. Then we realized, wait a minute, it's college. We said, well, the goal is really get yourself into a great college. That's not it either.
We realize now the goal is really about our guys having choices. An excellent education provides a lot of choices, but the route to being a great husband or a father or leader is hardly ever linear, and it's our job to be there all along the way.
After CJA, I went to a boarding high school, and really I kind of struggled there. There was no parents around. So really it was like college right out of 8th grade. So it's a lot on like a 14-year-old. My sophomore year, I was asked to leave. When I got the news, it was heartbreaking because really I loved that school. I instantly called the CP office and they had tons of support, and so I found a high school that was fit just for me.
CP is like the bridge from CJA to high school and from high school to college. College Persistence helps them with the high school admissions process, with college applications. We meet with every single 7th grader every single week. We have a really robust summer program that includes a tiered jobs program.
It gives them the opportunities for summer internships with corporations throughout the Chicagoland area.
We visit students every single year at their high school, no matter where they are, whether it's in Chicago, whether it's across the country at a boarding school. And we like to joke that you can't get rid of us. Even if you want to, you can't get rid of us.
CJ is your extended family.
They'll always make sure they're reaching out to me, see how I'm doing, and I feel like it motivates me to become better.
My family grew up in this community, and this type of service or school was not here. To have this support, not just for the students, but for the families, where you know there's a place in your community that's going to serve you all around, I think that's why we're here.
CJA really invests in you early to get you started.
It's all about the relationship. It's all about knowing each student and knowing what he needs.
Above everything, CJA is a safe place for our guys. They love this place because they can feel not just physically safe, but emotionally safe as well.
After my first month of 8th grade, my brother, he was shot and killed on Jackson Central, which is right down the street from CJ. And it was a hard time for me because I was dealing with school, I was dealing with the high school process, I didn't know where I was going to go. So it was already stressful. And it was bad. It was bad, it was very bad. But, you know, when the time came and, you know, when I needed help, it was there. It's just like, you know, a relationship with your family. Like you can, even if there are hard times.
It's real in the school. The relationships are real.
It's loving. It's loving in the school and it's loving out the school.
They're amazingly talented guys, and we're so incredibly proud.
I hope to major in either anthropology or economics or finance.
I plan on majoring in
education and minor in geology.
This is my third summer at Walsh Construction. I work at the Chicago Board of Trade. The bond is definitely going to be forever between CJ, faculty members, and the students and their alums. There's nothing that can take CJ out of my heart.
CJA will be a part of my family forever.
So I have 2 minutes left, and I'm not going to use all of them. I just wanted to make sure you understand the students that are going to be using technology. The students that are going to be using the technology that some of you in this room are going to create is going to open doors for them in ways that gives them that independence, that freedom that we are trying to give them. I have guys who have started to learn Scratch. I've had guys who are learning how to, in their technology course that I teach them, they're learning how to manipulate digital video editing and Photoshop, and like they're trying to gain skills because they have goals, and those goals can be challenged. And if you can create a program that a student can use to further his own future, that's something worth creating. So I'd be happy to talk about the school more after, but I know we're here to talk about the technology that these guys are using. We actually used Bundle AR's program when we visited the DeSable Museum last year. So stuff like that is getting into schools, and the more of it, the better. So thank you very much.
Okay, so, real quick show of hands, who's never tried a virtual reality experience? Who's never tried augmented reality? Okay, so for those of you, I'm not going to actually make you keep your hands up or anything, but treat this like Fight Club. If this is your first time, you have to try it. We have experiences over here for you to try. If you've never been in virtual reality, you don't know what it's like. The only way to really understand this technology to start is just to experience it. So please, if you haven't done that yet, when we do get to the demos again after the discussion, first of all, panel members, come back up. You're welcome. This is your point. Okay, so the point of this evening, the point of this whole meetup that we do is for you. It's all for you guys to get your questions answered to, I don't know how many of you are educators. Show hands real quick. How many educators got it? Show them high, come on. All right, how many of you are technology people? Content creators? Artists. Okay, but the point is, this is for you guys. We're here to get your questions answered. Whatever the next step you have to take in terms of using this technology or figuring out what you need to figure out to be able to benefit from the technology, that's why we're here. Any of us here, any of the VR area members, again, you'll see us when we're in these things, they're pretty easy to spot. Just ask us whatever questions you want to. That's the whole point of this. We're here to help you. Before we get to the panel, I'm going to do one more thing because, we've all been talking for a while. You guys have been sitting for a while. So, little exercise. Everyone, stand up, please. Yeah. Okay. So, here's the trick. This is a real simple one. We're going to take 2 minutes and do this. I want you to answer 3 questions. I want you to meet somebody who's near you that you've never met before, preferably. And I want you to tell them your name, where you're from. You cannot just say Chicago. If you're from Chicago, tell them what neighborhood you're from. If you're from the suburbs or anywhere else, that works. And tell them what you think is probably the coolest use of virtual reality that you think will be coming in the next year or so. Ready, set, go. Find the person next to you, give them a giant high five. Thank you. That was really fun exercise. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next thing about how this is going to work, the next hour we have is literally just for you guys to answer questions. We're going to go and see if Julie is still here. Is she still here? She is still here, if we can get to her. Hang on, Julie, I got to change the speaker back to you. Give me 2 seconds. Virtually.
Yeah.
Try something for me, Julie?
Yep, I can
We can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, so you're not able to see, you only get to see me, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
keep
That's
working
okay.
on
I'm actually
webcam.
watching, I've got double screens and I'm watching the whole
Are you
stage
watching
on
Facebook?
Facebook. So yeah, I'm like, I'm making it work here.
Okay, so for you in the audience, because we are actually streaming this to Facebook and we do have people listening online, the one thing I will ask is wait until the microphone gets to you. We have a microphone on that side, we have a microphone on this side. If you'd like to ask a question, please just raise your hand and I will wave somebody over to you. Who's going to be the volunteer that goes first? Who's got a good question? Right here up front, Lewis.
Okay, guys, I've been thinking a lot about the future of education in a sort of more general way. What I've been focused on is something that I'm extremely interested in. I'm sort of a museum addict. And I'm very interested in the evolution of museums, and especially in the area of augmented and virtual reality. A lot of museums are now experimenting with that. And I go to these exhibitions, along with more conventional ones. I'll give you an example. In the British National Gallery, there's an exhibition on the way in which Leonardo da Vinci painted the Virgin of the Rocks. It's a wonderful painting that they have, actually, one of the 2 versions of now. I'll get to my point here. And there are a number of other museums. There are some actually, like the Atelier du Lumière in Paris, that is purely digital. There's nothing else there, just purely digital. And they have immersive experiences in virtual reality. One of them is Edo, the old name for Tokyo, and experiencing Edo in virtual reality. Now, I'm bringing this up because I think that the future of education should be tied into the development of museums and the future of museums, because they are doing some very interesting work in this area. And I would like to see, thinking about how museums and schools can be brought closer together, so that what museums do could also be integrated into curriculum. Maybe this organization could have a catalytic role in doing that. We have to remember the fact that Chicago and Chicagoland have very important institutions of higher learning, very important institutions of secondary learning, and so on. We were talking about that here. We also have to remember that the Chicagoland area has some of the leading museums in the world. Within the So, as I say, it isn't a question, it's a comment.
Okay.
Well, what I'm saying is that this should be catalyzed and move forward. I think this is part of the future of education.
Can I comment to the comment? So one of the organizations that I've been able to work with my class is the Chicago History Museum. And the Chicago History Museum is doing some fantastic things with AR and VR, and a lot of it is free. So if you go to Chicago 00, they've been working with Jeffrey Allen Rhodes, who's at the Art Museum, or the Art Institute, and the Chicago 00 group has been taking a lot of their archives that are not on display in the museum and figuring out how to put those into a VR format or an AR format in a way that is accessible to any school, because anyone could go and use that VR application. We just do it with my students with phones and cardboard for the VR stuff, and the AR. I think one of the best AR experiences in the city is the Eastland Disaster, which is a free app, and you go and you look at it. And so I agree. I think there's some connections
between the different ways that we educate, and they seem to have their finger on the pulse of some of that.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add about that is we had, several months ago, we did the topic was museums. And we had Raj Paran, who at the time was, he was working for Intel, and the project he was on was the Smithsonian project. I don't know if you guys know, but the Smithsonian's like when you go to all the Smithsonian museums in DC, as well as some of the satellite ones, because Dusauer Museum is actually a Smithsonian museum, something like 2% of everything they have is what's on display. It's like this fraction, all that gigantic, immense museum space, and that's like 2% of their actual collections. And what Intel was doing is digitizing the entire collection, everything, to make it available, because they just don't have the real estate to actually make all of their stuff available. But again, it's valuable, and I want to have that archived so that people can access it. Next question.
I actually wanted to.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, sir.
So we actually design museum interactives. One thing that's really interesting to me is, what you just talked about is more of an educational use of technology to inform people. A lot of what we do are experiential interactives. A good example, we did 2 interactives for the Chicago History Museum for their Montbochet exhibit a few years ago. We created a design address, and you basically actually tried that. Yes. Okay. So you could go in, and basically what there was is there's a touch screen, and then there's a real dress form in the corner. So as you design a dress on the screen, it shows up on a real object. And we did another one for them, which I talked about earlier, where you can design your own mid-century living room from all of these historical pieces of furniture and furnishings. And a big part of what we wanted to get across with that was, it's not about learn about how these things are, but like to experience what it's like to design things like that. And so it wasn't really it was educational about the furniture and the design of the period, but it was also kind of an educational in the idea of like, let's get people to experience what it feels like to design things. That's something that's kind of hard to teach in education is, what does it feel like to be a designer without going to design school? People could show up and there's 20 different styles of fabric and sizes and accents you could put onto this, and you could feel like a designer feels to do what they do without actually, learning how to design or draw any of that. And I think that's one of the big benefits for interactives like that. Another thing that I found is museums, like other institutions, they're huge. They do a lot of shows. They cost a lot of money. They're sometimes slow to adopt new things. There were people, when we were talking about some of our exhibits, that it kind of blows their mind to think we're not going to have something that's either a video or a screen with buttons or a touch screen that you can play with. They don't think in that way. A lot of institutions sort of get into, we do interactions with TVs or this or that, and sort of to explore new ways. It takes a little, you sort of have to educate the museums first about what they can do with all these things. They do kind of like touchless interactives because there's less stuff to break and clean. But then there's more stuff to break that's technology that they know nothing about. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
So I just wanted to comment on that as well. So there are different universities in particular partnering with different museums, galleries, especially in Europe, looking at how they can use AR, VR technologies. But what's interesting, if you go K-12, often when we design these experiences, we design them as adults for adults. And so how young people and children will explore the world can be very different. So I think that's something to really consider when we start to design and change these experiences, especially as we get in early childhood. So we have like a developmental map we work on with our children. At pre-K through to grade 1 and 2, there's significant differences in developmental in young people. So what they look for, what they're exposed to, and so how they see a room is very different to how we do as adults. Their lens is different, so it's really interesting to start to look at how do we then design virtual worlds specifically for very, very young people to explore, right? And they will touch, break everything, but that's great. It's wonderful to see them exploring and so forth. It's quite fun.
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm a web developer and English teacher. I'm 22, so I get to do that. And that would be good. Best day. Cool. Okay. So the question that I had was very relevant to both. How can we use VR to make abstract things more concrete?
I can, but I want to hear.
I mean, so one thing in my class, like I'm stuck with, how do we make social responsibility a thing, right? And then how do we use technology to do that? But that's not me using the technology. The students actually design. They don't create the apps because it's a 7-week class and they're freshmen. But they design something that can perhaps further social responsibility, and it's always a little bit tricky. Matt, you saw some of them. Like some of them, like kind of really hit it on the nose, and some of them I was like, okay, there's a stretch there. If what you're saying is how do we make ideas like social responsibility or like liberty, right, like become more concrete? Some of it's having like the students play with technology and come up with ideas on their own. You might have some.
Yeah. So I'm going to go here with an example, if that helps make the abstract concrete. I think looking at, so we partner with an organization called Tangible Play. Some of you might know them. How many people have children here? A couple of people have children. Ever heard of Osmo? Osmo bases. Anyway, so Tangible Play, it's all about how you can use physical, tangible objects with digital technology by which to create and code. So you can use building blocks in front of an iPad and actually code from that. And I think one thing with our youth in terms of taking them through an experience, so they experience the abstract and then creating space for them to verbalize that experience helps them relate to it. And I think that relatedness then makes it concrete for their learning experience, right? So, if you could talk to them about surrealism, right? So I'll give you an idea. We have one of the apps we developed with Osmo is called the Osmo Kaleidoscope. So anyone remember playing with kaleidoscopes when you were really little? Amazing. But what you learn in terms of symmetry, geometry, color, light is fascinating. Now imagine that through a digital iPad, through a Chromebook or any kind of technology. Super different. But our youth explored a lot of those different concepts, so they're learning about a kaleidoscope, which is very abstract when you are in kindergarten and grade 1. It's an experience, but you can't put language to it. That's why we do project-based learning, so everything has an experience, but our young people help design the experience, and so we're learning with them, and that's how I suppose we would make the abstract concrete, make it experiential, which is why I love virtual reality and augmented reality in learning experiences, because you can take really abstract aspects and bring it into an experience. Does that help?
It's not sure. Hello? Oh, there it is. Okay. And to add to that, there's a lot of research that I remember learning 20 plus years ago about when you have movement and learning. So if you're doing a virtual reality type of product, you want people to move, to grasp something, or that type of thing, because the research, the neuroscience research indicates that movement helps to solidify in the brain learning. Or even having them speak out loud, okay? Repeating things. Again, the ear hears it, the neuroscience backs that the learning is stronger in that way.
Anything, Julie?
No, not to this question. Not this one, no.
Yeah, she's there. I was going to say, the one thing that I'll just note on this, and it's not so much a direct answer to how do you make abstract things concrete, but it's the one thing you'll notice particularly with kids in virtual environments. Does anyone remember, who's played video games where you have a tutorial that's like, okay, to do this, you do this, to do this, you do this, and it's 15 steps of tutorials just to do the basics of playing the game. In VR, kids just pick it up. You don't need the tutorial. They just interact like they would in the world. So if you think about it that way, it's not really, you you can also put things in a virtual world that you can't have in the physical world because it'd be too dangerous, like, you know, gravity, demonstrate gravity. You can do things like that very easily in a virtual world, or, you know, physics experiments that, well, let's just face it, we can't, you know, like split atoms right here, right now, because that would be a bad thing. But in a virtual world, you could. You know, so there's stuff like that that you can teach in virtual reality, and again, you can literally just have it where it's in front of you, and you're physically just going like that, and it's done. That's one other thing that I guess that sort of technology allows, I guess, would be a way to put that. Yeah, I'll let you first.
We had one.
Oh, you got one over there? Sorry.
Yes, I have a question on the downsides of using the virtual reality in education. I believe using the AR, VR is very fantastic, especially in education. But you know, as long as I know, when I use the Magic Lab, it says the kids under 12 years old is not allowed to use the Magic Lab device. So because they might, you know, affect some negative effect, you know, when they use low time maybe. So what do you think about the, you know, the AR VR safety issue? Yeah.
I think with all technologies, any kind of experiences, and people by that matter, that we bring into the learning experience, we need to really consider not just the learning experience, but the safety for our young people. And I think it depends on the technology, it depends on what that experience is and how we test it and experience it. So depending on how much time they're spending. But I think safety is a real issue. So for example, at Bennett Day, we integrate technologies into the learning experience when it's related, when it's necessary. So it's not like they can go off into a corner of a room and spend the entire day, you know, hanging out on the technology. It's very purposeful. So I think developing what we call learning protocols and around the technologies, and we're very intentional as to who our partners are, how the experiences have been designed, who's involved in the conversation in the design of that. So for example, with two companies, I'm not going to mention any names, of course, but two companies we work with, what we discovered in just talking about the partnership is they had been designing technologies for children, yet hadn't actually been in a learning environment with children as part of the design, right? So it's mainly adults designing for kids with no input from children or families, sometimes teachers and parents, but and so it's really interesting to how do you create an environment where you're looking after the children, and that's what's most important to anything we do. But we need to experience it. So, and I'm always testing technologies, I'm always getting to know people, I'm always reaching out to other educators who have used the technologies in certain ways, you know, all sorts of different ways. But it's an important factor, especially at early stage development, because they're so open and susceptible to what they're learning, but it depends on the technology. So, did you want to add to that, being an educator?
As far as the safety goes, I don't have anything really to add there, but to your initial question about potential drawbacks and challenges of implementing this kind of technology in the classroom, it actually is cost and time. In general, time is the #1 premium in any classroom, and something that takes a long time to set up, something that takes a long time to learn how to use, you know, like we were talking about, if there's a 15-step tutorial, a teacher's not going to put that time in. It's just not realistic with all of the challenges and pressures that come with meeting state testing standards and however long the class period is and setting up the gear, and is something that's going to work in the classroom is going to have to be planning for those drawbacks. It's going to have to be able to be set up and used quickly, and also not necessarily for extended periods of time. Kind of gone are the days are when a teacher puts on a video and 45 minutes go by. Like, that doesn't really exist anymore, thankfully. And at this point, if something isn't able to be controlled by the teacher, that could be a problem. The technology would be best used and best set up if there are targeted things that a teacher can select for the students. So as far as safety goes, a centralized system where the teacher is able to control which students are able to access at what times, and not just for safety, but just also for the actual instruction of today's objective is to learn this skill, and this technology is going to be used for 15 minutes, and that's it, and I only need you to go here. You don't want to wander off on this rabbit hole that takes you wherever you may want to go that might be interesting, but it might not actually target the skills or the content that you're looking to develop. And as far as the cost goes, I know that CPS just ended an 11-day strike, and my school is independent, but like our funding is entirely coming from independent private donations. So everything that comes with a cost, whether it's large scale, I forget who was talking about working with the districts. I think that was you. It's, if a district is looking at the cost of something and they have to buy, 50,000 licenses, that's going to be a challenge. That's going to be a drawback to that program being used in the school.
Hi. First, I want to thank the panelists for sharing your all experience and honesty. Ask a hopefully important question that's maybe a bit abstract, but I'm going to try to make it concrete by embedding it in a story to show how outcomes come from possibilities of causality. So basically, we accept it's true that we're in a Minecraft generation where young people are playing with an architecture simulator, and they're basically accelerating their learning, and they're already very creative and competent. Their neuroplasticity combines IQ with adaptability quotient and love quotient. They could democratize expertise and democratize prototyping, including designing their own curriculum. So if young people basically make adults more into tribal leaders than siloed experts, specifically my question is, what questions should we ask young people about distributing resources beyond Google-like feudal surveillance socialism and Wall Street crony capitalism? How should we think about us over the age of 35 becoming obsolete workers and our social security being the education we provide young people today, right now?
Sorry, this one's going here first.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? All right, so I think I heard that, and that remains to be now one of the biggest challenges is what is the access that we can all have. Hold on a second, I'm going to mute this one just because I'm getting feedback. Okay. One of the things is that we're having a hard time drawing on the content that's out there, and there's so much of it, and there's no organization. There's a lot of fragmentation in different technologies and the applications and things like that. One of the things that I'm working on right now is creating a platform to plug in educational experiences that we can have access to. It's going to take us a little bit, but I know that there's a lot of things that are going on right now that are within the ecosystem, people trying to curate the right content so that it's available in the right sectors, whether it's K-12 or higher education. So through my XR Ignite program, that's something that I'm starting to curate from the technologies from around the world to try and provide that best education. So that's my feedback on that. The distribution model is something that the schools will desperately need to have because of the cybersecurity issues and just the screening and the rating of all of the different content for the school curriculum that's out there. So I think that's going to remain to be a very big challenge. And the speed at which all of this stuff is coming out too is, by the time you take an experience to the school and say, hey, can you show this to grade 5s? Already there's an experience right behind it that's, a little bit better. It's got, it's monetized a little bit better in the way of analytics and polygons in the quality count as well. So I think that's just going to be something that will build these systems. It's taking some time, but certainly something that we need to stay on top of to curate the best systems for the students in the next generation to access.
Thank you. I wanted to say specifically what I was asking is, what should we be teaching young people about
the distribution of resources in the economy if adult experts become obsolete because of what we're trying to do, right? Which is make young people capable of designing anything using their creativity and their brains, their neuroplasticity. That's sort of the outcome of accelerated learning is adults become like elders and become wise and don't become necessarily economic masters.
So I'm not sure what that last question was. I didn't quite hear it.
What should we teach young people about economics?
I'm gonna let that one go to the room a little bit, actually.
Sounds good.
So that's beyond just the AR stuff, like a lot of, not your question exactly. I'm trying to decide where I fit in that model. Am I a wise elder now? Or not, I got a couple of years yet maybe. But it's not exactly, but that is, a lot of those questions are at the very heart of the curriculum in our common tech degree. Parents ask, what kind of job are they going to get? Communication majors are like, anything and everything, but maybe nothing. Right, so you have to find your path and figure out how to convince someone that the skills we're giving you are job worthy. So there is always that track, right, of education towards a career model. But along the way, one of the things I like about DePaul is there's this opportunity to have these conversations. And so we talk about, and this is getting into more of my social media research, not the AR research, but, can social media facilitate participatory democracy, or are the power structures just too much to be able to do that? And we have these kinds of conversations. So what is participatory democracy? What is public sphere? What is participatory culture? How do these things all kind of come together? How do we see these power structures underlying what then happens in technology? And so a thing that I worry about as a higher ed educator, not in the K-12 system, but also a parent of kids who are in the K-12 system, is that the kids are swimming in a world of surveillance that is very different from what the wise elders grew up with. And I don't know what the effect of that is going to be. I've done some writing on how that influences identity and how fixity influences the way that a lot of things happen. And we see fixity in information coming out, like in politics, right? We see it coming out when a tweet from 10 years ago, okay, not 10 years ago, but a tweet from the early days of Twitter, when it was a very small audience, is still there and it becomes a big thing, and we see this kind of context collapse. And kids are swimming in a very different environment, and I do get concerned sometimes when applications that they're using in the classroom are collecting their data, and it's not clear how you opt out. And our district just added a fitness tracker for the kids, and I like, really? Wait, this is and so and the PE teacher is so sweet and he's super excited about it. But that's a different kind of tracking and surveillance that they're just gonna think, oh yeah, that's just the way it is. Just like, kids 10 years ago were like, browsers are just a thing, right? There was no idea that you're gonna have to plug in a URL and know where you were going and that kind of thing. And they're just gonna kind of see the world in this way. And I do think it behooves the adults to think about, it's great to have them interacting with technology, but they should know how it's built, right? As George was saying. Right? They should know the pieces behind it. We should be teaching them those pieces as well, how the whole thing comes together, and how it affects their behavior and their sociality more than just, here's a cool thing, play with it, and all the while it's sort of tracking what's going on. Just to keep in mind.
I want to say too, that question talks a lot about access to information and technology. I've with the Chicago Children's Film Festival, we worked on workshops at 69th and Halsted for public schools. It's really deprived schools. Like half of the lesson was, let's make all the computers turn on for the first 15 minutes, because the keys are missing and they're old and they're slow. And then the same day I had portfolio review by my house in Glen Ellen where, there's $1 million worth of technology in a room. There's some of that, but I think one thing that we need to teach kids about the use of all this kind of technology is, I'm a very technologically trained person, but you could probably get a monkey to do my job with enough bananas. I feel like teaching kids that just learning stuff is going to get you somewhere doesn't always help. I think they need to understand that it's about creativity, which for me is about connecting things together. VR could be anything. You could do VR to show you how to assemble your refrigerator, or you could use it to understand how people feel in other countries. Like connecting those things together, I think is the real skill that's gonna take students beyond just I'm gonna go learn stuff. I mean, I have a friend of mine who has a six-figure business that he dropped out of high school and learned everything on YouTube. You go to the library and learn that. Your life situation might be different depending on where you're from, but access to information and creativity and getting to where you want to go and learning how to think creatively, I think is really important for this because people talk a lot about STEM and science, but scientists are people who sit around and ask dumb questions all day. Like, how do we get, if I connect this thing to a wire, can I make electricity? I mean, Edison wasn't like, he wasn't a big technical person. He was a guy who asked a lot of questions and tried stuff all day. So I think that's a big important part of what we do too, is it's not just go and read books and go to Harvard or wherever you MIT.
One more thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to close off just because it's an hour later here, and I'm going to go spend some time with my kids. Just to tie into the rest of the panel, I think just one bit about education that everybody needs to know. Was part of my conversation yesterday was about this industry is a lot more than just coding and robotics. And there are a lot of roles within this industry we have to try and inspire the next generation to be a part of, whether it's the creativity side, the logistics, project management, and user experience. So I think having the next generation understand all the different aspects of this industry is really important to help foster their own passions and find them. So I think I'll leave off from that. Thank you so much, panelists and everybody in the room, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Reach out if you want to connect further.
I was going to, so I was going to add just a thought, a few things came to mind. There is a company, and the name of the company slipped my mind, maybe someone on the panel knows it, but there are companies out there that are now helping schools vet quality educational materials that are tech in nature, okay? The idea being, because there was a couple years back now, Google was, Google has always offered Google Classroom for free and things like that. Well, what they found out that wasn't being told was that Google was collecting all kinds of data on your kids, kind of thing. And so once educators got wind of that, they said, we don't want to use Google anymore because now you're collecting all this different type of data and there's no permission for that and so on and so forth. So there is a company, and it slips my mind, I'll have to try to see if I can come up with it, but there's probably more than one company, that they basically are platforms that have clearly vetted a variety of software and technology products, and they have, I'm sure, checklists and things like that. In addition, a company that you might be interested in learning a little bit more about digital citizenship as it relates to teaching and education, and it's called Common Sense Media. And Common Sense has all kinds of lessons that are free for teachers to teach children how to be good digital citizens and that type of thing, and to not overshare online and things like that. But also Common Sense just has droves of information about technology use and that type of thing. So you might want to try to look into that. When you're creating your products, you want to make sure that your products meet certain specifications that you have a better chance of getting them in the education realm. Look up that type of concept of vetting companies that vet on behalf of schools, as well as Common Sense.
Got a question in the back, way back, and then I'll get the one in the middle of the room.
How's it going? So my question is,
one thing that kids really hate, especially me when I was a kid, was homework and like reading books at home. So how can we make homework with like AR and VR? How can we make that more enjoyable? Like learning outside of the classroom. You know, what are your ideas for that? Yeah, that's my question.
I'm going to start actually really quick on that one. I have 2 daughters, they're 8 and 11. I want to make sure I'm getting that right. I know, I'm terrible. They're going to be watching, so this is going to be funny. First of all, they read insanely, constantly. Like, if I'm trying to figure out where they are, I can just look around to see because they're being quiet, read the book. So, personally, when I was a kid, I agree with you, I hated reading. I would never read. You couldn't pay me enough to read when I was a kid. Now I actually kind of like it, but when I was a kid, never. That said, both of my daughters have obviously been in VR a decent amount of times, and I have a lot of educational content on the Oculus Rift. Everything from some of like the biology experiments we can like actually go inside the body and travel through the blood system and things like that, as well as just some other basic, kind of building games that teach you things besides what you're building. So there's math programs and things like that you can use. When you gamify things, it takes the education out of it, even though they have to learn to do it, and they are learning as they're doing it, but as far as they're concerned, they're playing a game. So it's fun. Those programs exist now, and there's going to be more and more of that, I'm sure, as time goes on. And so, ultimately, it gets back now to kind of the question they were talking about earlier. Okay, well, my kids have access to that because they've got an Oculus Rift in the basement, they're going to have a Quest, and they have a Magic Leap. So they have access to all this stuff because I had it. Not a lot of kids have that at home. So I guess the question then becomes, how do you make it so that they do have access to it?
So on that question regarding reading as well, I would actually probably contest that you read far more now than probably other generations. You just don't realize it. And younger generations, unfortunately, I'm no longer in this cohort, but snack on content, snack on information. You're writing more and you're reading more, but you're reading and writing differently. And you're connecting language and narratives differently. So I would say these kind of experiences can expose you to learnings in a far more immersive way, where you are part of the experience and reading about it than it being like I go through a textbook, right? And back to back, page to page, and there's exercises. So it's quite interesting. We use Z-Space at IMSA, Illinois Math and Science Company. It was kind of interesting how in our biology classes they use Z-Space by which to explore and go into the heart, go into the lungs, really take apart different parts of the body, and then throughout the experience they could take notes, they could read different snippets and discussions or definitions of things. So I think it becomes far more a different experience with writing. We also, so Bennett Day, with the projects that our students use, because they design them and they're part of the design of them, they have a little bit more agency, or they feel a little bit more agency over what they're doing. And so as a result, to give you an idea, our upper school just this last trimester, for the first 4 weeks, and I know it's an independent school, so it's a little bit different, but we're experimenting, we're innovating on what's different ways to design learning. But they explored different neighborhoods in Chicago and came up with a plethora of questions that they had that then helped design the curriculum. They wanted to know about gentrification and migration here in Chicago. They wanted to know about waterways and architecture and different things. And so then the faculty spend the time finding resources that are relevant to their learning. And so the students actually felt they had more agency of it, and so read more because they're interested in it. So I think we have a job to do in education in how we design the learning experience. So VR and AR could be part of it, but also, we can use very much hybrid, very face-to-face experiences as well, and it becomes an entire experience. But I would actually contest you're probably reading more, but homework is different, right? Homework's a job, and it's work you've got to do, and you've been told you have to do it. And the way you're experiencing it is nothing like what you're experiencing on Insta or Snapchat or anything like that. So it's just not engaging. So let's change. By the way, the textbook market is a racket. Huge racket. EdTech is a racket as well, by the way. I do want to get back to this question. Can I do that? Can I engage this question on marketization? So it's quite interesting, and it relates because the economics behind these industries We need to be not just talking to young people about the financial models of how these industries run, the marketization of higher education. When we look at ed tech, there's it is a huge industry. The amount of apps that are collecting data on our youth and our children that we know nothing about. Teachers don't know where that data is going, who's purchased it, who's sharing it, and it's connected to identities. So we've got a job to do, I think, in the sense of how do we involve educators, schools, different people in the design and development relationship, but then how do we talk about the actual economic model of education, as well as the economic model of technology. We find by doing these projects with youth, it means they've got to learn about budgeting, they've got to do fiscal management. So we really need to be having those conversations with our educators and our youth, right? Because there's a whole business model of education that we're not having that conversation. And that will address, I think, these conversations. And it's youth asking us the questions, what they want to know about, not just us telling them. You'd be surprised, right? I think Washington.
Let's go to the middle of the room. Yeah, no, right here, right here. Give it up first.
All right, I'm going to go back to the whole abstract becoming concrete thing, and I think it's almost a frivolous task to make the abstract concrete because it loses beauty. I think the abstract has to be respected, and what we want to do with the abstract is ponder it and imagine it, and I think that process is really what inspires people. And on that whole train of thought, I want to know from the people that are on the stage, what are some of the most inspiring immersive content in the educational space that you come across?
I'll start with that, and this comes from my experience with working. It's actually in healthcare, but it's also used in university setting, which was when I worked for the company Embodied Labs. What they were doing is teaching people using virtual reality. They were teaching them what it is like to have Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease or other diseases to generate greater empathy. So from my own personal perspective, I thought that that was just an amazing concept of teaching people with immersive tools to feel what it's like in other people's shoes and things like that. So.
So I just want to say that, like, the whole experience of immersive media for me is really inspiring. Some of the first things that I did were, put on a headset and go through 360 photos of places I'll never go to. A cave in Jordan somewhere that only a researcher gets to go to, or just the experience of feeling what it's like to be somewhere else. I think has always been really amazing, and talking to the democratization of technology and how it helps people. There are people in this city that never leave their neighborhood. They'll never see these things unless you can put them inside of something that shows them how it feels to be there. And for me, seeing all those things inspires me to want to go do all that stuff. Go hiking. Go to strange places I'll never get to. I mean, I feel like those kind of experiences can really help in education to broaden people's understanding of the world and where they want to go and what they want to experience.
I'll say around inspiration is actually watching intergenerational teams work together on the design of these experiences, and that was one thing that happened in Z-Space down at IMSA and our high school students collaborating. But that was, while the actual experience itself probably required a lot more work, but it was really interesting to see how they see the experiences differently. That's one.
Yeah, also, I don't know if I have a specific one, but I think when it is something where you can pick it up quickly and start to create something with it. There was a bunch of art apps for a while, and a lot of them are falling off the App Store and being replaced with things that aren't quite as interesting. But those are the ones that my students really gravitate to because they felt like that was the AR experience of not only could they see something different about the world, they can manipulate something different about the world.
That's been my experience as well. Is my students are at their most engaged when they can have agency in what's happening. So traveling far away, that is for a lot of guys that have never left the city, they can teleport to the other side of the world or back in time, and then not just look at a picture or look at the video, but decide where the video goes, that is deeply gripping for them.
I want to go with the space station. Sorry, it's actually a free experience on Oculus. It's the ISS, basically the International Space Station, but there's all sorts of stuff around the space station you can explore. Of course, you're in zero G, so you have to use your hands to throw yourself in zero gravity around space, kind of like you would if you were actually on the space station, which combines the learning with someplace I'm never going to go. Yeah.
Some of the panelists kind of alluded to what I'm about to ask, but I'm very much interested in the possibility of AR being like a co-creative space, and like where kind of social AR is going. And so I was wondering if there are any current, or maybe like what would it take for something like Wikipedia to kind of exist as an open AR platform where people can co-create in geographically specific areas, and what are the potentials for that being like a civics kind of platform?
Man, I can start by telling you to look for the Open AR Cloud Initiative, which is, there's a lot of things right now called the AR Cloud, which are, basically trying to create what's called a digital twin, so effectively a computer version of the real world, but mapped to the real world. And there's a lot of different companies that are trying to create it, there's a lot of different companies that are going to own it, or they're all trying to own it, but at the same time, once you have that, it's very easy to make collaborative experiences because, and it's also easy to make layers and layers and layers and layers of different collaborative experiences so that you can have private ones, you can have public ones, you can have shared ones that are shared within small groups. And you could, in theory, crowdsource information about places like Wikipedia does as well. And I know, that's a plan, people are working on that. You can actually, like I said, you can look up Open AR Cloud Initiative right now, you can look up 6D AI, which is it's an AR cloud computer that they're using your phone, and you basically just scan space and it'll mesh the space. But as you're meshing space around you to do AR experiences in it, that's also going up to the cloud, and they're keeping geographic memory of it. And as more and more people do it in a space, the cool thing about that too, though, is you can have. I think they had 4 people walk their office space and map the entire space in 3D in like 4 minutes. There's a video of it online. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but you can look that stuff up. But yeah, collaborative. Wallame's collaborative, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I think. So, Wallame's a collaborative one. Just Align has the potential to be collaborative, but like in a weird way, because you can like connect to 1 or 2 other people. And so, they kind of get my point was the issue that I see with the students when we take the apps out, it's always density. It's always about, are there enough people within this space using this app to make it feel like you're collaborating with other people who might be around you. And so I've had to make the experience work for the students, I've had to create that density, right, where they follow each other around in groups and then there's something to discover, because there is not enough density within the app. And then we realized something too, I had thought, well, over the years, right? I mean, as long as this app exists, so it hasn't been updated in a long time, so I'm a little worried about this one. But we've been using it for 3 years, and so I thought, well, there's, if you go up to North and Clybourne, if you're on the red line and you pull up Wallame, you will find the Adventures of Orange Man. But there are a couple buildings that have been torn down, and so the way that the photo, it has to record the photo and figure out where you are, those are just gone, right? So if we want to use these kinds of applications for people to connect to each other in a geographic space, but sort of divorce it from time, then there has to be a greater density of users. And then that's going to bring in its own set of concerns and issues, etc. But that's what I've been seeing when we're out there in the world kind of playing with these things, is that if there's not enough people using the app, then they don't get that feeling of I'm engaging with a lot of other people. So Pokemon is one that is a little bit different, because almost every time we're out, we find other people who are playing, who are at that Pokestop, who are on the bus, catching Pokemon as they go. But that it seems to be unique in building that kind of density. But think how long that took Niantic to do, right? That was a game built on a game built on a game built on another kind of mapping platform. It took a long time to get that going.
Oops, there we go. I wanted to say in response to your question earlier too, about that. I mean, it's sort of like the teeter-totter of, you know, a terrible corporations collecting your information, and they also have a lot of people on them. And a lot of their tools are it's free or accessible, you know. People talked about how to collaborate or share information with AR, you know. Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook may be an evil corporation, but you can debate that if you like. But you know, the point is, it's really easy to make us, you know, an AR educational piece, and everybody can access it really easily that has a phone who can download Snapchat. You know, you can put up a 3D model of the Taj Mahal and tell the kids, you know, go do the snap and take a look at it and tell me what the back of the building looks like. And it's really easy and accessible. And so that's my part about the, you know, density, but collaboration. I've actually worked with my team on having meetings in VR about creative projects. There's 3 of us that are in different cities, and it really helps a lot in terms of creativity to sort of take yourself out of your body. We go into, you know, we've done it on Facebook Spaces when it was there. We've used another one. You know, for us to be able to, you know, one person I worked with would always draw stupid things and stick them on my head in VR, you know. That was like our joke, or we'll use filters while we're having meetings, you know, turning ourselves into clowns and stuff. It helps the creative process for us to be able to do that. You know, it's if any of you have been in a meeting where you want to shoot yourself, because you're, you know, it's 5 little people like sitting there trying to look like they're paying attention for 20 minutes. And there's nothing creative about it, you know. Like the meetings we do with augmented reality and VR, they allow us to do the job we're there to do better because we can be slightly silly about it. So I mean, that for me is one benefit of the whole platform, is like it allows us, and you know, we also go in with virtual whiteboards. We can draw things to each other that we're working on. So I mean, there's a lot of benefits to the collaboration side of that beyond you know, just the technology.
Got one more question in the back, and we're actually going to call. Oh, sorry, over here. And we're going to go real quick. We got that one, and then one more in the back, and we're going to end it. The one thing I'm just going to add to that in terms of the meeting spaces, there's technology called Personify, which is actually AR related. What you were talking about, which is basically I can see a hologram of the person, but it's using AR, so I'm looking at my actual physical space. That's coming around to hear more about it.
Okay, so I know the possibilities are endless when applying VR and AR inside the classroom to enhance studies, but do you see in the near future AR and VR bringing the classroom to the students wherever they may be, whereas maybe to help children who don't have the same type of access, possibly higher education as online education becomes more popular, or just fundamentally changing the way we think of the classroom and make it more conducive to learning for this new generation.
I just want to mention, so I'm going to put my Australian hat on right now. The School of the Air in Australia has been experimenting with these technologies. So they have an incredibly robust network of education and learning experiences that they've been delivering for millennia, because School of the Air is for students that are on stations throughout Australia that are in highly rural environments, and usually it used to be via literally a radio that you would call in, and your peers would be at, you know, at home on stations or on farms, you know, literally hundreds of miles away. But it was really interesting how they would form a network at a school, and they would do their reading, they do their mathematics over the radio, and they would log in every day. And then when the internet came, they migrated to using more internet-based communications and technologies. So School of the Air is experimenting with that. And it's really, really interesting because they're not actually designing a virtual experience that is a classroom. It's actually depending on the nature of what the subject matter is or what they're doing. So if it's history, then you literally go to Egypt or go wherever. Like, so it's really interesting, but they're experimenting with a small group of students. But that's because all the students are distributed. They're not co-located. So and it's just interesting. Yeah.
I can add to that
Equity in education continues to be a huge concern, worldwide, but certainly in the United States. We know that there's pockets of poverty. We know that there are remote areas that don't have the same access as we have. One way that it's starting to be addressed a little bit, and literally I was reading some articles in just ed tech magazines or education magazines, not necessarily tech, but they are now parking school buses in poor areas that actually have internet capabilities so that students don't have to try to go to the local McDonald's to have equal access, okay? Obviously, that's not a great solution, but it is something that is really a problem still, and until we start to have more equitable funding for education, and I mean, that goes into, the economy and everything else, that's a lot of social stuff. But that's one way that they're trying to address it, which again, I think is not an effective model, but it's one thing that they're doing.
I just wanted to add, it sounds kind of reductive, but I like to think that something VR in education would be good for would be things that require muscle memory, because there's a lot of games you can play where, my wife played one that you're in a NASCAR pit stop and you got to crank the things to get the tires off. Like, I could see having, school for mechanics where you go through the book, then you go, okay, you need to take this off, you need to do the steps in the right order, an app that lets you do that, and your body can remember, and then you could go, once a month and actually work on the real thing. Just because, it still has the problem of access, but it's a way of thinking about it that I think helps a little bit.
And actually, there's a Chicago chapter member called Induvo, and that's what they do. They have training that is machine, like maintenance training in VR, and these are machines that there's 2 of them that you could afford to possibly take apart for training purposes in the whole world. So what they've done is they've recreated them in VR so that before you actually have the chance to learn it physically or have to go on site and build one or maintain one physically, you can train on the things in VR. Because again, that training literally they can't just deliver it in the real world because it'd be too expensive to do it. The one thing I wanted to talk to with Matt though, because you had said, you teach in, let's face it, a low-income area, a low-income school, and a place that has a lot of restrictions in terms of resources, but even you had told me that almost all your kids have smartphones.
For the most part, yeah. Cell phones have gotten to the point where they are financially available for almost everyone. Despite, you may have a family who is very low income, maybe has subsidized housing or subsidized food. They generally always have cell phones, and that is also the case worldwide. I've just in the news hearing things on the radio about areas around the world that don't have any kind of widespread penetration outside of a cell phone for communication, and that is the reliable source of information and communication, not televisions, not a hard line on a computer or through a PC. It's the cell phone, and that does hold true in my experience with students as well.
Yeah, it just goes the concept being that if you can deliver education through virtual reality on a phone or through augmented reality on a phone, there's your distribution, even to areas that don't necessarily have a lot of resources. Last question in the back, and then we're going to cut this so that there's some time left for the demo over here and the demo over here for those of you who raised your hand early and have not been in VR. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. So it's been interesting to listen to all the commentary. So I guess the one question I would have, and I would probably start with Matthew, given the fact that he's a teacher and he's working in an environment outside of the cell phone analogy that doesn't really provide for access to certain things, is that, and for the rest of the panel, if you could close your eyes associated with what would be substantial to bring into the school associated with helping them, maybe not necessarily at a VR or AR perspective, because obviously that's a process, right? But in terms of just preparing them to break the digital divide and to prepare for technology, what would that be in your mind today?
I could start with that and say professional development time. for the teachers. Because you can bring all the technology in the world into a classroom, but if you do not give the training to the teachers and to have a continuity of training, not just a one and done training. One of the hardest parts of being a teacher is just that we get all these things and then we end up, there's just not enough hours in the day to take them in, even when we get one PD event or professional development. So I would just say, tech is great, but you need to provide the support and the training for it, and repeatedly.
Yeah, I agree with that. Earlier, when you were speaking about the stakeholders of how to get technology into education, my experience has been it's not just having the administrator who is interested. I served as a dean for 9 years, but it really is the classroom teacher who is taking like a personal stake in providing those kinds of resources. So when you're talking about leveling the playing field and giving access to as many people as possible, as many resources as possible, it's time and it's ease of access. So if there's a program that's working on a cell phone that can be in a classroom that anybody can use and is intuitive, that's something that can be implemented for just about anyone. I have students who I have tried a number of different types of technology, and how intuitive it is to actually work with the program makes a big difference. And for the guys who are willing to sit there and tinker with it, that is really powerful as well. Earlier we were talking about critical thinking and creativity, in having a space to simply work with something that might not be doing what you want it to do, and having the time and the coaching. We talk a lot about how a teacher is not the person up above giving information to the person below. A teacher is next to the person guiding them through what they're doing. So I want my student to, here's your goal. Great, let's make a plan. How are you going to accomplish that goal? And then give them some tools. And for the most part, those tools aren't going to work at first. The technology course that I teach the guys, I actually titled Iterative Design, because they had to pre-plan what they were going to do when they failed. And they weren't allowed to say, I'm not going to. Because they're gonna. And I think that is as valuable a thing as you can learn, is how to respond when what you tried didn't work. And technology has helped them with that. And the more of it that we can embed into regular classes, like a lot of that is, my students are using Tinkercad to do 3D modeling in social studies class. Like, that's a good thing. And that means that, back to the time, that means that they're not going to get, I had to shrink the unit about Greece and increase the unit about Egypt. That's okay. To the gentleman who was asking about the homework, like, I'd rather have you read one page deeply than 20 pages quickly. And I'm in favor of anything that's going to empower students to do that.
I definitely think from a school perspective, we need to start looking at the business model of these things. I know I mentioned it before, but there are resources. So for example, at Northwestern University, Professor Reed Stevens and Dr. Nicole Pinkett, who ran Unique Washington out of the library, they've got research studies where they're specifically looking at how do we broach, how do we, the digital divide. We also, as a school, by partnering with institutions that are doing research, helps us fund some of the stuff that we can't afford to fund in our school. So I think we need to start to look differently at how we're doing that, so that the technologies can be available and at a totally different kind of cost structure. And that means having a real honest conversation about these things, but who you partner with, and do it in an intentional way, and so forth. That's very, very important. But there are definitely, I think, resources and people researching in this space that can partner with schools that benefit the school and also the research.
I just want to say, so I'm not an educator all the time, or even most of the time, so I have a slightly different perspective, because a lot of things that I teach people are either something that supplements what they normally do in class, or it's students who've never done that kind of thing before, which shows you a lot about how they're being taught to begin with. One thing I think students need a lot, even at a really early stage, is kids are taught that computers are either their entertainment or it's like silly stuff. And then there's things that matter to you somewhere else, or a computer is something you use to turn in your science homework or write a paper. And sometimes, the workshops we do, it's the first time they've tried creating something with a machine that's, especially something that's meaningful to them. Like, they can always do like a stupid picture of a dog getting hit with a rocket or something, which if you teach kids, they like to do that a lot. I always have to make a rule in my animation classes: you can't blow anybody's head off in here. But there's not a lot of we did a workshop. I did a workshop for 2 weeks at 5 different schools in Pakistan. We brought 50 tablets that these kids use. Some of them probably had never even used these things before. But one of the things we wanted to teach them is that you have a story to tell that's important, and you can use technology to do that. And like that, I think a lot of kids need to learn that, and what they're doing, that it's not just something you go on to watch YouTube videos of people hurt themselves on skateboards. It can be a tool to communicate something that matters to you, and that you can to do that gives you power that you don't have before. So I think that's something that it's not specifically education or VR, but kids need to learn what technology can be used for good things.
And with that, I do want to thank our panel for being here. I want to thank all of you for being here. In case you didn't have a question you wanted to ask that you didn't get answered, VRARchicago.com. There's a web page specifically for this event. Everyone up here, their contact information is on it. So if you want to reach out to them, you can. Sorry. And if they give me a presentation, that'll be posted there. This event was streamed live to Facebook. That means a recording, it'll be posted. So if you want to go back and look something up that you couldn't really remember, it'll be there. Other than that, the resources that I gotta kind of speak to a little bit is VRAR Chicago. If you're going to be, VRAR Association, particularly the Chicago chapter. If you're going to be working in the space, if you have questions about how to do stuff in the space, reach out to us. Yes, we're a membership organization, but at the end of the day, we'll still help you if you're not a member, because obviously we'd love you to be a member. If you're going to be working in the space, you probably should be. There's a lot of benefits there for you, but at the end of the day, this is about growing this community, about getting this technology up. One of the questions that I like to bring up a lot is, or one of the statements I say is, if you ask people in 1996, hey, how many of you think you're going to be using the internet every single day for the rest of your life for everything you do? There's not a lot of people who raise their hand. Same question in 1999, you have more than half the room being like, oh yeah, I use it every single day. VR and AR is technology that you will be using every day in the next couple of years. This stuff is going to blow up like the internet because it's just becoming more accessible. Every single one of you has an AR device in your pocket and a VR device in your pocket. It's built into the operating systems of these ever since 2017. So you're going to see this more and more, and the tipping point is going to be when there's things that you can't do without using AR, which there's already a couple. So all I was going to say is definitely if you're interested in this technology, definitely keep learning more about it, because it's going to be starting more and more over the next couple of years to be in your face and surrounding you. Other than that, next month we'll be talking about gaming and esports, so it's going to be a really fun topic. We've got a really good panel already lined up, including Keisha Howard from Sugar Gamers, Sonia Haskins, who's probably one of the best VR gamers in the world, as well as one of the best writers about it. And I'm trying to think who else is on the panel right now. Oh, Chris Lay from Mass VR. So, other than that, thank you very much. We do have a bunch of drinks still over there in the buckets. We do have a lot of demonstrations here if you've never tried VR before, or if you want to just try something cool, go for it. We got at least another 20 minutes in the room, so hang out, have some fun. Thank you very much.
Also, I have a VR demo that I haven't assembled yet that I'm going to show if you want to see it. It's VR illustrations and paintings. But, it's not ready.
Thank you. Thank you. Hang on one second.